Welcome to another edition of Interior Analysis Ranked. Today I'm going to be ranking all 8 Mission Impossible movies. So this is just going to be my fully biased thoughts. If you want my more impartial and objective, I guess if we want to call it that, thoughts on this series, I did a video essay that this video is a companion to about the first 7 movies in anticipation of the 8th. That will be linked at the end of the video. You can follow the links in the channel to find it. It's not required viewing for this. I might reference it, but probably if you're going to choose an order, watch the video essay first and then come back for this one. I also did a full review of the 8th movie right out the theater after seeing it, like, fresh as soon as I got home. So I am going to be spoiling all of the movies, and at the end I'm going to talk about just some places I think I would like to see the series go, like moving forward now that we're finished and we've seen what they've done with 8. So I'm going to go from the bottom up and just kind of give my thoughts as I go on each one individually. And yeah, there will be spoilers for everything, so warning there. Starting at the bottom, number 8 is Mission Impossible 3. I don't dislike any of these movies. I want to start with that. Like, there is nothing that I hate here. If you've watched my other ranking videos, I talk about some trends that I have movies that I really hate. This, at the bottom of the list, is like a 2.5 out of 5 or 5 out of 10 ranking or rating. It's more disappointing than anything else. I still have rewatched this several times. That's something I should say from the outset. I have seen all of these movies at least twice, and I've seen everything except 8 at least 3 times. So why is 3 at the bottom? It's not by a lot. These first 4 movies are pretty interchangeable in their ranking. They're at least pretty close to each other. I put this at the bottom because I feel like it just has the least going for it. Really, like, there's at least something redeemable. I'll probably talk about this with all of the later ones. But there's at least something that I'm like, all right, this has some element or some scene that the others don't, that at least makes it an enjoyable time. Or, like, makes it worth watching, if only for, like, these 1 or 2 things. I don't feel like the third movie really has that. It's almost my mental image of, like, a generic action movie, which is kind of sad to say, because I know for the time, like in 2006, it was maybe not pushing the envelope, but it was one of the more creative action movies of the time, certainly in like its visual style. And on that note, the J.J. Abrams of it all, I think this is one of his better movies, but it still features some of his faults. The main thing that I think holds this back is, so this is the movie that has Ethan's wife, Julia, in it as, like, the centerpiece. Like, she's the MacGuffin, she's the damsel in distress, she's why he goes to get the rabbit's foot and give it to Davian, and, like, the whole second half of the movie is centered around Ethan saving her. And really big props to Tom Cruise and Michelle Monaghan, and maybe J.J. Abrams directing as well here, because I think Julia is a criminally thinly written character, but you don't really notice it the first few times you watch it because the technical chops that are being brought both at an acting and production level, I feel like make up for how thinly written that character is. Same goes for Davian. I feel like there's more to him, but he's a pretty generic villain on paper. And Philip Seymour Hoffman just elevates that role so much in his performance. Like, he's maybe the most memorable villain of the entire series, and I think that is solely credit to Philip Seymour Hoffman. And, like, his line delivery and just his everything. Like, the scene where he is, like, Philip Seymour Hoffman, the actor, is playing Tom Cruise playing him. He somehow gets these, like, little Tom Cruise mannerisms down in this really impressive way. I love seeing it. It's maybe the best thing about this movie. Unfortunately, Davian is so thin on paper that, like, don't find him especially compelling. And it's not helped by the fact that Billy Crudup is like his man on the inside. He's just so nothing. And unfortunately, like, no shade to him, but Billy Crudup does not elevate that role at all. I hope you can't hear my roommate's cat skittering around outside, but if you do, that's what that noise is. What else is there to say with this? So, yeah, back to, like, the stuff with Julia. It's not what drags this down. Like, I don't want to say that, like, because she's here, she makes it worse. I really don't mind. In isolation, that's a perfectly fine element to throw in here. They just do nothing with her. It's just like, she's his wife, fill in the blanks. We know 2 things about her. We know she has a brother who's played by Aaron Paul, and we know she works at a hospital. That's it. That's truly all we know. And I think it's, like, again, credit to Michelle Monaghan that you don't really notice how thinly written she is, and that you actually feel a connection between her and Ethan. Like, that's all the performance. There's truly no scene that I think accomplishes that. It's just the 2 of them really, like, bringing their most to their, like, facial acting in those scenes. Shout out to, I won't say them by name, but I have a Letterboxd friend who makes a point about the heist for the Rabbit's Foot, where they said, like, they build it up to be like, oh, this is going to make Langley look like a cakewalk, and then we just don't see the heist. Like, we see Ethan swing into the building, and then that's it. I think that's, like, one of the most frustrating things with this is, like, show us the scene, please. Like, you can't just write around it, especially, like, if you're gonna do that, don't hype it up, don't do it with the big stunt. And they have a good heist sequence earlier. Like, if there's production reasons that they, like, maybe shot stuff and couldn't show it for some reason, or, like, had to scrap stuff, things got cut for time, maybe that's a reason why. But it's still, like, from an audience experience perspective, it feels like they kind of, like, cheated us out of what could have been a really good scene. And if the stunt was better and had some more moving parts, then I think that might make up for it. And, like, sure, again, like all the stunts, it's cool in isolation, but I think a good stunt sequence, like I talked about in the main video essay, it needs more than that. And I think that's one of the weakest. I guess the only other thing to throw in here, I like Lawrence Fishburne in this. Along with Philip Seymour Hoffman, he's maybe my favorite part. He has a couple of really good one-liners. I feel like once a week, I'll, like, come into a situation where I'll think, don't interrupt me when I'm asking a rhetorical question. Great line. I wish everyone else in this movie was written with, like, as much personality as they gave him. Another case where, like, well, actually, I don't want to say that he elevates the role beyond the writing, because they actually do give him something in the writing. And Lawrence Fishburne is well cast there. Why couldn't you give anything like that to Julia? Like, he's not a super deeply written character, but he's less important to it than she is, and yet we know, like, 3 times as much about him, which isn't even that much. I still enjoy this well enough, but I feel pretty secure in putting it at the bottom of my list. Number 7 is the 7th one. I think this is the only time that happens. Dead Reckoning Part 1 is next on the list. I think this one has the lowest lows. It does have a couple redeeming qualities that I'll get to in a minute, but I do feel like the negative is what I feel with it the most. And I'm showing my hand a little bit here, but Rogue Nation and Fallout, I feel like, set a pretty high bar, like, in combination with each other, that made my expectations for this movie, I don't think they were unrealistically high, but they were obviously too high for what it delivered. I think this is probably my biggest disappointment of the decade so far. And again, I don't hate it, but at the beginning of 2023, there were a few movies, I think there were like 7 movies that I was really anticipating that year. And Dead Reckoning was probably number 2 on that list, just behind Across the Spider-Verse. And I actually thought, like, if you'd asked me in, like, January of 2023, which ones was I, like, not just anticipating most, but, like, had the most faith they would deliver. I think Dead Reckoning would have been one that I was like, yeah, I think that will, like, I was afraid that Across the Spider-Verse couldn't repeat the magic of the first one, and it somehow did. Somehow it was even better than an already perfect first movie. For Dead Reckoning, I was like, it's just got to have more good action like Fallout had. Like, if the story's not all there, that's okay. You know, we have Mission Impossible 2, which has a not fantastic story. Like, the series has had its ups and downs at that point. But we're coming off a really big up. And we've got the same team. We've got Macquarie coming back as director and writer. And we've got, like, most of the cast returning. Like, all the big players are coming back with Luther and Benji and Ilsa and obviously Ethan. So I was like, trailer looks great. This is probably going to be, like, just give me some really good action scenes. And I didn't like the action in this. I don't fully understand why. It's strange that the action doesn't work for me here, because this series is so dedicated to doing practical effects and doing their stunts live in camera, and like they use CGI, but they are certainly much less reliant on it than the majority of other action series seem to be. And yet the action just doesn't feel real to me here in the way it did in Fallout. And I think it's just something about the way that it's shot. It's like a little too clean or something. I don't really have the language to fully describe it, but I just was really disappointed in the lack of sauce that was brought to the action here. It also kind of doubles down, like, there's not much else that this has going for it. It kills off Ilsa, who I think is far and away the best character. And in hindsight, like, this, I think when this came out, I think I put it as, like, maybe my third or fourth favorite of the series, and it's gone down since then. Like, the more I think about it, and the more I've, like, revisited it in preparation for making the video essay, it's really left a bad taste in my mouth, the way that they, one, kind of, like, dumbed down the series in that one. Like, I think they are not, like, super highbrow at their most intelligent, but they've been smarter than this. Like, I feel like that's my biggest frustration. If this was earlier in the series, I might be kinder to it. But at this point, I know that Macquarie and Cruz can deliver something really good, and the fact that they didn't is really frustrating. And, you know, maybe some of it's personal taste, but I think there's also just, like, there's a lot more holes to be poked in this. I'm bouncing around a little bit, but the death of Ilsa is really upsetting. Not just, like, because I like the character and it's, like, sad that they die. It's just, like, you're really, like, lowering the bar for the franchise. Like, it really drags it down. I think she brings such a great element to the series that no other character has, and I really felt the lack in 8 and in the parts of 7 that she's not in, and even the parts of 7 that she is there for. She's not really doing, like, Ilsa stuff like she's been doing in the 2 movies before, and they kind of have Grace as her, like, replacement. I feel kind of dirty using that word just because, like, she's another, like, kind of shifty female ally character, or, like, you know, character who becomes an ally, I suppose. But they seem to kind of be including Grace to be Ilsa's replacement, and it's such a downgrade. No shade to Haley Atwell here, by the way. Like, perfectly good actor, she does a good job in these movies. No shade to her at all. The construction of the character is nowhere near as interesting as Ilsa. You introduce Grace as, like, this pickpocket thief. Sure, that's cool enough skill. And then she's not terribly capable for most of the movie. Like, she does an impersonation scene. Sure, does a decent job with that. Her pickpocket skills come up once or twice more. Okay, at least, like, there's more than one instance of it. But I was thinking about this before recording, and the thing that I feel like is one of the most frustrating downgrades is Like, you kind of have Ilsa as this maybe love interest character. They never fully committed to that, but they seemed to be, like, edging toward that angle with her in all three movies that she's in. And I feel like in every single scene that her and Ethan have together, they are, like, equals. Like, they have a similar amount of experience. They seem to be operating on, like, equal planes of intelligence and skill level. Like, she can kick ass and, like, drive around and do cool spy stuff as much as he can, and is perfectly capable of, like, screwing people over if she needs to, and, like, you know, playing government agencies against each other, stuff like that. We see a lot of that in Rogue Nation. And there is an established, like, shared worldview that they have, particularly in Rogue Nation. There is so much to that relationship that I think is, like, they do a pretty good job with it in those early movies. I had said it in the main video essay, but I was like, I was always okay with them keeping that relationship platonic. But I think they did the work to, like, if they made them a couple and, like, put them together romantically, I don't think it would cheapen Ilsa or Ethan at all. Like, I think that would have been a natural evolution of their relationship, and, like, you wouldn't lose anything with it. With Grace, she feels like there's not an equality to that relationship, and I'm kind of, like, jumping ahead to 8 as well, but you see it also at play in Dead Reckoning. She doesn't really seem to share a worldview with Ethan. Like, you kind of have her coming around to it at the end with joining the IMF, but it almost seems like she's following in his footsteps more than anything else, and she's just so dependent on him in a way that I find really frustrating when you had this person in Ilsa. Like, if you kept both of them in the series, that might be something where, like, you have, like, the kind of veteran in Ilsa who's kind of already at the top of her game, doing cool spy stuff, and then you have this greener person in Grace who is, you know, seasoned as a thief, but is new to the world of espionage. So she kind of has to be taught a few things and can be sort of like a rookie character, even though I think those actors are basically the same age. She's certainly presented as a much greener figure. And I find it upsetting that she's the one who sticks around and has a similarly, like, maybe this is a romantic dynamic with Ethan, but we're never going to explicitly push it to that place. But she feels almost childlike in comparison. Like, they're almost doing this love interest angle, and yet their relationship almost feels more like he's her mentor, or even like a father figure in some ways, because she's just always looking to him for what to do. Like, she's taking orders from him in a way that is never the case with Ilsa. Like, even when they're on the same team, it's not like he's her commanding officer, and it really feels like Grace is subservient to Ethan, and again, dependent on him very much, especially in the action scenes. So that gets a lot of the negative out of the way with this movie, and there's a lot of it. The main positive that I have with it is I did really like the theme that they established. Some of it is just that, like, it's a theme I agree with, and I think they established it pretty well. The character Degas, or Dega, I never know how to say his name because I think they've said it both ways in the two movies he's in, but I really like the inclusion of him in this movie as someone who's chasing Ethan and his team, but is kind of observing them at the same time and realizing that these aren't the bad guys. Ethan Hunt isn't somebody who's trying to be duplicitous and is really just looking out for everyone. And there's some really good moments where Ethan looks out for even the people who are chasing him and is, like, expressing this theme of looking out for not just your own team, but also, like, the people who are maybe, like, kind of opposed to you in a more like physical sense, but aren't necessarily ideologically opposed to you. You see that at play with the Shea Wiggum character and kind of the White Widow as well. Like, he won't go out of his way to hurt them because they aren't like his ideological enemies the way that Gabriel is. I think that's all woven in very well, especially for like a popcorn movie like this. They give a lot more attention to the theme than I feel like usually happens in this sort of movie. I wish any of that level of care had been brought to the rest of this movie, because I feel like it's its only redeeming quality. Like, the story's kind of a mess. The Entity and Gabriel are not terribly well written villains, and once again you have this backstory where it's like Tom Cruise has a type. Is very well established in this movie. You have, you know, your two brunettes that are like, one is replacing the other, and then you have this other nameless woman who Gabriel killed a long time ago, who I straight up like started having theories like, is she Grace's mom? Because she looks just like Haley Atwell in that one flashback, like the one close-up they have of her. She looks just like Grace. So, dude has a type. Also, Tom Cruise seems to really have a thing for, like, he cares very much about being seen protecting women in these movies. And again, like, that isn't the dynamic with Ilsa, which is why I liked it. It feels really played out to have this sort of dynamic, especially in a series that I feel like does a pretty good job of, like, mostly in the later ones, of like not doing the James Bond thing of like over-sexualizing its female characters, and also like giving them cool stuff to do, and also just including a lot of them. Like, especially in Dead Reckoning, you have the White Widow, you have Grace, Ilsa, and Paris. Like, 4 female characters in a spy movie is kind of a high number, especially for one with a male lead. And they all kind of occupy different spaces. On paper, I think that's pretty cool. And yet it always kind of seems to end up, for some reason, I don't know who is dictating this, but they seem really dedicated to, like, showing Tom Cruise being a protector of women. Worst things to be, for sure. But it gets a little repetitive, for one thing, and it just feels like, I kind of hesitate to use this term, but it feels a little bit like grossly patriarchal in some way. Stick with Ilsa. You had something great there. If you're going to have that dynamic with other characters, at least keep her or one like her around. That wasn't really a point that I was intending to get into. I think I was trying to be on a positive kick there. I do like the theme of this, though, and I do like how it's continued into 8. If your big action franchise is essentially about, like, being anti-AI, you know, in the last 2 movies, it's about being against AI and pro looking out for your fellow human, regardless of whether you have any personal attachment to them or not. I'm here for that. If this series is going to continue, sure, let's keep that around. But everything else in this movie was really disappointing. Hopefully that's my longest entry in this. Certainly I think it's going to be my most negative, despite it not being the bottom spot. Next one, and people are going to be mad that I have it this high, but Mission Impossible 2 is at spot 6. I am tired of pretending that this is the worst movie in the series. I feel like everyone kind of agrees, like, oh yeah, 2 is the worst one. I'm not going to say y'all are wrong, but, like, there's too much that's fun in this movie for me to, in good conscience, agree that it's the worst one. There are some boring bits in it. It is really goofy. I know I didn't like it when I first saw it. I think I was in, like, 8th grade. And I was really annoyed at all the slow-mo, and I was like, this is really stupid. I had seen the first movie at that point, and then I tried it again a few years later, and I was like, oh, okay, it's, like, still kind of stupid, but it's okay. And then we did our watch-along a couple years ago on Patreon, where I showed it to David and Jelani as their intro to this series, and I want to reiterate that I did not know that they hadn't seen any at that point. I would not have normally introduced them with 2, but I didn't know it was going to be an introduction. We had a lot of fun with that, and I rewatched it again for making the video, and I was like, it's just a lot of fun. It may be dumb, but I'm smiling throughout a lot of it, and the camp of it might be its main redeeming quality, but at the same time, I enjoy the experience of it. I'd rather watch it than not. You've all probably already heard, if you've seen the movie, like, you know all the criticisms. I think it is well deserving of criticism. Naya becomes basically a damsel in distress. Better character, I think, than Julia, but not by a lot. Thandie Newton, good performance there. I like Dougray Scott, I don't know if I'm saying his name right, as Sean Ambrose. Kind of a fun villain. At least his accent is fun. And I do like the little detail that, like, he's been an Ethan Hunt impersonator agent. I think that adds a nice little dynamic. There's some dead zones in this, and, like, the, like, espionage level plot of it is maybe the worst one in the series. I think it's a sequence at, like, a horse track that goes on for a pretty long time. I think it's like a 15-minute sequence right in the middle. That's a pretty low point. After that, it's pretty fun and campy and has all of the, like, slow-mo Tom Cruise flipping his hair and doing, like, weird karate stuff, stupid motorcycle stunts. So it's certainly not the one to, like, present this series as quality or high art, but I still have a good time with it, and I think it's the first one of the series I'm comfortable saying that I like. It also has my favorite line in the series, maybe, or at least up there, with Anthony Hopkins saying, well, this isn't mission difficult, it's mission impossible. Difficult should be a walk in the park for you. No notes. Stupid, campy, and perfect. Also the fact that they got Anthony Hopkins, like, that's just kind of fun. Moving on to number 5 is Ghost Protocol. This is on a list of movies that I have made called movies that have their entire existence justified by one excellent scene. And I'm pretty sure you all know what scene I'm talking about when I say that. Climbing the Burj Khalifa, that stunt sequence is pretty dope. Maybe the most, like, impressive face value stunt in the series. And there's, like, I think it does the stuff that I talked about that a good stunt sequence in these movies should do. It's got moving parts, it's got complications that go wrong, and it's got, like, clear stakes set up and goals. Like, even down to the end when he, like, does the big swing and falls into the window. Great button to it. Like, I think it's a really well-constructed stunt sequence. The rest of the movie is fine. That list of movies, like, you might be trying to guess what other things are on there, and I want to, like, just quickly make the stipulation that, like, it's a short list, because there are plenty of scenes that are good enough to justify a movie's existence on their own, but they are, like, part of good enough movies that, like, there are other things to justify its existence. This list is stuff where it's like, that one scene is really all it has going for it, but the scene's really good. Like, it's either bad or mid. I'm not going to say the other ones that are on there, at least not right now. In this case, like, Ghost Protocol, I don't feel like has a ton going for it, and some people might be upset at me. I know a lot of people name that as one of their more favorites in the series, and I just can't get into it when I'm watching the rest of it. Like, it's almost the same thing as Dead Reckoning has, where I'm like, yeah, there's, like, cool stunts happening, but, and, like, the plot is mostly passable. That impersonation scene, that's actually probably the second best scene, is the impersonation scene. It also has no plot reason to be happening. I can't break it down for you right now, but I was paying attention this last time I watched it, and I was like, yeah, if they didn't do that scene, like, nothing changes. And I think it's the first example. Oh no, it's not the first example. Actually, far from it. But it's one of the examples of the, we're going to give the villain the MacGuffin. Wait, really? We're going to give the villain the MacGuffin? That's so dumb. Why would we ever do that? It's the only way we can stop him. Okay. That happens so many times throughout the series. I don't know why it took me so long to notice it, but I really didn't until late. And then I started thinking back, and I was like, yeah, basically every movie in the series, with, like, maybe a couple exceptions, they're giving the villain the MacGuffin because they're like, that's the only way we can beat him. Is it? I don't know. I wish I did enjoy it, and I think I did like it a lot better when I first saw it in the beginning of high school. I was probably like 14, I think. And I think I saw it like right after 3. I just wish I could. Like, there's nothing to really dislike about the rest of the movie. It just doesn't really deliver any highs for me. I kind of like that it's still like the aesthetics of the world and like the trappings of it, and it does have the most forgettable villain, which I can excuse. I don't feel like that really drags it down, but this is like easily the weakest villain of the series. I don't feel like anyone will really object to that statement. They do Paula Patton a little bit dirty. Also, Tom Wilkinson, like, why wasn't he in more of these? He's decent in the couple scenes that he's in. I think this is where I feel the lack of the team the most, because they really try to center around it. Like, they have the scene at the end where they're like, this team was the only thing that functioned, and I'm just like, yeah, but you didn't really sell me on them. Like, they at least give them some personality. You know, a lot of that is just Simon Pegg. And even Jeremy Renner as well. They at least give him some stuff to do and, like, give him some personality. I think it would have been a lot stronger if you bring in Brandt and Paula Patton, because Benji's the tech guy, sure, and, like, Luther's not in this movie, except at the end, so, like, maybe they thought they were going to be replacing him. That's fine, but give Brandt and Paula Patton, I can't remember her character, but give the two of them, like, a specific skill that they bring to the table, especially if you're going to keep Brandt around. And maybe they didn't know if they were going to, maybe they thought they were going to keep Paula Patton around too, but regardless, like, I feel like that's a really easy fix that this series could have in a few places, is introduce a new team member. What is their skill? We almost never get that, except in the first movie, really, and I guess kind of with Grace as a pickpocket, but that only comes up a couple of times. I really want this series to have a good team, and I think this is where they tried the most, but for my money, they really don't deliver. So that's the most disappointing thing I can say about it. Otherwise, it's like, it's fine. It's a perfectly passable time. Only one small other nitpick: they do all of the location text when they're showing, like, an establishing shot of a city, and they say, like, oh, this is Moscow or Langley or whatever. They use Cambria font, which feels like such a tacked-on choice. Like, you used the default Microsoft Word font for your spy movie. You didn't even want to do the, like, Courier typewriter one, or the, like, I don't know what the name of it is, but the, like, coding font, or just, like, something cool. Put it in italics even. Like, it's such a basic choice for something that can add a little bit of flavor to your movie, and you just did it like it's iMovie. I feel like that's just a choice that they should have not made. Very minor nitpick. Okay, moving to the top half of the list. The Final Reckoning is at spot 4. I saw this a second time after my review of it. I think I went 2 days after, maybe 3. I went the Friday it opened, and then I went the Monday after as well. And I felt the weakness of, like, the first hour or so of this movie in that second viewing. I was along for the ride well enough the first time, but in the second one I was like, there's really not much here until you get to the submarine sequence and then the climax. I do enjoy those scenes, though. Submarine sequence, pretty great, and I timed it out. 15 minutes is how long it is, and I do appreciate, like, just that they don't cut. I said this in my other review. I appreciate that it's uncut, that they, like, go really hard with that one. That was kind of the main thing that I wanted out of this, was, like, at least give us the good action that we didn't get in Dead Reckoning. And I think I can say that they did. That sequence, and then the planes at the end, like, that might be, I don't know if it's my favorite stunt of the series, but it's up there. The plane sequence is so good. I, like, was gripping my seat a couple times that first time around. Like, that was a pretty high. And then Luther's monologue at the end, like, the last hour of that movie is pretty good. I don't think you need the first hour and a half or whatever it is. And I said a lot of my other complaints about, like, a lot of the stuff with Grace. Like, her character just is emblematic of a lot of the faults of that movie, and I already talked about that, so I won't get into the negatives as much. And I did my whole review on it, so you can go watch that if you want my, like, full thoughts on it. There might be a couple other things that I forgot, but there's one point that I made in that review of The Final Reckoning that I want to correct. I talked about the one mask scene where Ethan and Benji save Paris from, or, like, break her out. And I think I said, like, that before they take off their masks, they're shooting at other characters. I paid attention to it the second time around, because I was like, is that actually how it goes? Are Ethan and Benji in disguise shoot, like, those people that they're disguised as, are they the ones that are, like, firing shots? And that's actually not the case. There are two other regular guards in that scene that are the ones that are, like, shooting at Paris and Degas and Shea Wiggum. My gripes with that scene are actually invalid. I still don't think it's a great sequence, but it was not the thematically confused mess that I thought it was when I first saw it. But I think I can be forgiven for that misreading because it happens pretty fast. I think this might sour on me on rewatches. I don't want to say I was disappointed. Like, Dead Reckoning lowered my expectations for this. I still kind of said, like, after seeing Dead Reckoning, I was like, that was disappointing, but 8 could still be really good. And for better or worse, I actually, no, for worse, 8 was kind of, like, taking a lot from 7 in ways that I didn't like. I don't like how the series continues being dumbed down for, like, the part of the audience that isn't paying attention. I found that frustrating. I talked about it with the friend that I saw this with the second time, and he was like, I needed those lines. I was like, well, okay, I guess it's good that they're there for you. I still find it really frustrating. And I think you can do both. I think other entries in the series have done it much better, where they do slow it down enough for the people who need it, but also they don't do it in such a way where if you have been paying attention, like, you roll your eyes at it. I should say also, I think I've mentioned this on the podcast before, and this is about Dead Reckoning, but I forgot to mention it. There's those early exposition scenes in Dead Reckoning where they've got Carrie Elwes, Robin Hood from Men in Tights, as the CIA director, and all of the Talking Heads characters with, like, the biggest cast of cabinet members ever are doing exposition really hard at him. The second time I saw Dead Reckoning, I went with another writer friend who I don't think he had seen any of the other movies. But during those scenes, every, like, 20 seconds, there would be some line that would just make him go, ah, or, like, have some kind of, like, visible or audible reaction of just, like, these really cringy exposition lines. I'm a little bit more forgiving of that. I still think it's kind of clunky, but it was really funny to see his reaction there. I don't know if he's seen this newest movie, but I know that he would have had those exact same reactions. I kind of did too in 8. Yeah, I'm glad I saw this in theaters. I'm not going to rush out to buy it physically. I own all of these other movies physically. For the movie I was anticipating most this year, I don't think it's delivered. I just saw Ballerina a couple nights ago, and I think that has very easily topped Dead Reckoning, or The Final Reckoning, as my favorite of 2025 so far, along with 2 other movies. One of them is Sinners, and one I want to talk about at the end, just very briefly. Moving on to the top 3. These are the ones I actually really like. Number 3 is the original first Mission Impossible. I've seen this movie 6 times now, I think. I saw it for the first time when I was 10 on my last day of 4th grade. I remember we rented this, me and my brother and a couple of our friends. On the last day of school, we, like, had a bunch of people over, and a couple of them slept over, and we rented this movie. And I didn't get it at the time, but I still thought it was really cool. And as I revisit it, it's not as airtight. I finally, like, after several viewings, can basically follow the plot of it. There's some plot holes still. I don't understand why Jim Phelps shoots Claire at the end. The more I think about it, the less sense it makes. And how does Ethan know that Jim's the one who set him up with the Gideon Bible doesn't really make sense. What is, like, the worst that happens if Jim gets away on that helicopter? We talked about it. We did a whole podcast on this right before Dead Reckoning came out, and we did a whole topic on the climax. A lot of that doesn't work. Everything else in this movie, I think, is pretty great. I really love the opening with that team. The Langley heist, fantastic. The introduction of Luther, great. I think this is the best Luther movie, for better or worse. It's too bad they don't build on him. I talk about that in the main video essay, but I really like him in this movie. I really like that the movie ends with him and Ethan, like, maybe saying goodbye, but, like, they've kind of, like, formed a bond in this 1 hour of screen time. And I wish there was that kind of attention brought to any relationship in the later movies. Even the other love interest characters don't get as much established dynamic as Luther and Ethan do. Ilsa's probably an exception there, and maybe Benji as well. I think there's a bit that establishes Ethan and Benji in later movies. But I really like that. It's iconic. I think it kicks off the series really well. I kind of wish we had one more De Palma movie in this series. Like, maybe if you had in between 1 and 2, there was one other movie, like if 2 was actually the third one and we got like a direct sequel to this first movie directed by De Palma, I think would have been pretty cool. And if there was something else that was like a little earlier on that had more of like a really twisty espionage plot, because I feel like this and Rogue Nation are the two like best spy plot movies where there's a lot of deception and like deals being made with third parties and different government agencies like clashing, and our main characters kind of being tug of war between them and like bringing in people who are maybe allies but maybe enemies, we don't quite know. Like, I wish we had that established more strongly by the later entries as like this is something this series is going to do. But we do get this as a good entry, so like at least we have a movie that delivers on that element really well. I think Rogue Nation does as well. But this used to be tied for my top of the series, and in rewatching it again, I was like, like the plot holes are standing out to me a little bit more, and because there's so much like twisty stuff in it and there's a lot of downtime, those do hurt it a bit more. Like, plot holes I don't think hurt the more action heavy movies of this because it's not trying as hard to do like a twisty plot. When that's kind of your main appeal, you do want to make it a little bit more airtight than this one is, I think. But it doesn't ruin it. I still had a good time watching it. I still, like, every few minutes was just like, God, this movie rips. Which is one of my favorite feelings to have watching anything. So, number 3, I think, like, I would love if I ever got to write a Mission Impossible movie. If I wrote one as good as this, I would consider that a job well done. I would like to clear all of the other 5 below it, though. Not to throw too much shade at the people who wrote that. I know it was probably a difficult job, but this is the bar I want to hit. At least. Moving on to number 2 is Rogue Nation. This moved up the ranking for me. For some reason, it didn't really stick in my head the first 2 times I saw it. I also saw it pretty late. I didn't get to it in theaters, and I saw it just before Fallout came out. And I was kind of mid on it at the time. I was like, yeah, it was fine. And I really only remembered pretty much just the water tank stunt sequence. A lot of the rest of it didn't really stick with me, and that's still kind of true. Like, a lot of the third act of this movie doesn't really stand out to me. Like, even watching it the third time a few months ago, I was like, oh, I kind of forget, like, where it goes after the motorcycle chase. And that's kind of a nice feeling. I feel like this one is the tightest writing-wise. It also introduces Ilsa, best character in the series, and does a really good job of doing it. I think the team is maybe at its best here. I could do without Brandt, and I could do without Alec Baldwin, but they're fine for what they're doing. I think it's probably got the best mix of, like, pretty good story, even without the action, but there's also good action to go with it. Motorcycle chase is pretty great. I could do without the airplane hanging sequence at the beginning. Like, it's kind of another case of like Tom Cruise is doing something cool, and then that's kind of it. Like he's just hanging there, and that's impressive, but they don't really make a scene around it. The water tank sequence is not that case. The water tank sequence, I think, is probably tied for the best stunt in the series. Actually, depending on my mood, I might put it over the edge. It might be number one. Probably tied with the skydiving in Fallout and the Langley heist, and maybe even the plane sequence in 8. This one has a lot going for it. I think the only thing that would put it over the top as number one is if it had better action, but the action here is still good. From a writing perspective, this I think is the gold standard. If I could write a better mission, like a more well scripted Mission Impossible movie than this, I would be thrilled. I don't know if I have the juice for that. I would love to. I would aspire to that. And I especially like that, this one cares about its characters. It gives some thought to the ideologies of Solomon Lane and Ilsa and Ethan, and even Alec Baldwin's character. And even like Luther and Brandt, kind of like, because they kind of have a little buddy cop dynamic for a little bit, and Luther's like, I don't know you. I don't know if I trust you yet. I don't think it brings a lot to the table, but like the characters feel like characters here, and that is not the case in 7 and 8. And I think it starts to not be the case in Fallout, but I think that still does a good enough job. But like this is part of why 7 and 8 were so disappointing for me, because I was like, Macquarie brought the sauce to Rogue Nation from a writing perspective. So I know he can do it. I know he has done better with this series. So it's frustrating that he decided not to for 7 and 8. And I don't really know why. I hope for his sake that he has an excuse, because I know that he's a talented writer. Not just from these movies. He did Usual Suspects, and he did Edge of Tomorrow, and I think a few other movies that I'm blanking on at the moment. But like, he's a really talented writer. And I think that is most on display here out of the movies in this series. So this is one that I will be really excited to revisit. And I think I slept on how good it was until preparing for this video. And finally, at the top, as I'm sure you've already guessed by process of elimination, my number one of the series is Fallout. As I was sitting in the theater for The Final Reckoning, I was thinking like, this could be the best of the series, but I think it's more likely that it'll be the worst. And I put on the Fallout soundtrack as I was drowning out, not the trailers, but like the other commercials they play before the trailers, because I hate that those are there, but I just play music to drown them out. And I put on the Fallout playlist, or the Fallout soundtrack. And I was just thinking about, like, at least, no matter what The Final Reckoning is, we still have Fallout. And in revisiting this series, I was like, I really think this is the gold standard. Like, the action in this is so good. And I think the writing is there enough that, like, I still enjoy it. Like, it almost fits in with, like, John Wick 2, 3, and 4 for me. Mostly, I'll say mostly it's like John Wick 2, where fantastic action sequences. I love watching just, like, the pure craft that's on display and the practicality of everything. And even when it's not, like, there's some stuff in this that is pretty obviously CGI, but is still really, like, the skydiving sequence. I was not a fan of that the first time I saw it, and I saw it in theaters. This was the first one of them that I saw in theaters. And I was like, if that's their big stunt, like, I hope they have something else. And they did have a lot else. But in revisiting it, I'm like, nah, that skydiving sequence is pretty great. I really like it. Even though there's some, like, the storm is obviously not really happening and they're using a lot of CGI there, it's still a really good looking long take. I think if you really want to appreciate how good this movie is, go watch The Gray Man. That terrible Netflix original movie with Ana de Armas and Ryan Gosling and Chris Evans and a couple other people, Bridgerton dudes in it. Like, that movie is Fallout with no sauce. And, like, you can feel the difference so much. Like, they have a skydiving sequence that's a lot like it, and they have, like, a twisty espionage plot that doesn't really work. And they have Chris Evans with a mustache. being kind of like Henry Cavill in this movie, except angrier and shoutier, and doesn't reload his fists. This has been the most fun to revisit. It has, like, all of my favorite things. It has the best action. It has my favorite character in it. It has also, they get rid of Brandt, which is fine. White Widow's a cool introduction as well. I even like Angela Bassett as the CIA director, even though she's not doing a ton here. I like Henry Cavill as a villain. It has my favorite running sequence. It has Lorne Balfe bringing the theme song to new heights with his version of it. When I say I'm a Mission Impossible fan, this is, like, what I point to. Like, this is why. And I don't think I would have really called myself a fan of it, this series, until I saw 5 and 6 in close succession. I really wish that 7 and 8 had just been Fallout 2 and 3. Because, like, I didn't need it to be better than Fallout, but I wanted it to be as good. And I've said this before in this video, but I'll say it again. You set the bar really high with Rogue Nation and Fallout. And it was really frustrating to me that you could have done that and chose to do this other thing that is in almost every way not as good. And I probably shouldn't try to point blame for that, but I don't think I'm alone in that frustration. Whatever it is, like, whatever visual techniques they brought to Fallout to make it as good as it is, like, I just want more people to bring that to action movies. I'm partly thinking of John Wick a lot because I saw Ballerina recently, but I feel like that is the approach. Like, the John Wick fight choreography thing is what most action movies are doing right now, to be like, look, we're doing good action, and I'm here for it. Like, that's great. But I feel like this is kind of the movie to beat for, like, a big budget 4-quadrant, like, not going, like, R-rated levels of gore and violence like the John Wick movies are, but, like, still explosive, really solid action. I don't really think I've seen anything else take that approach. Fury Road is probably, along with the John Wick movies and this, my, like, other favorite action movie. And even Furiosa, I don't think tops any of them. I'm not sure which one I would put at the top. But, like, those are the movies to beat. And I feel like the only style that has really been evolved, I guess Top Gun Maverick kind of is, like, trying to push the envelope as well. And that also gave me some confidence going into Dead Reckoning, was that, you know, Tom Cruise is very dedicated to practical action, and it looked really good in Top Gun Maverick. Even the parts that weren't practical looked really good. And I don't understand what was missing from the last two. But I want to tout this as, like, the action movie to beat, because I think it's an attainable goal, whereas, like, Fury Road is this massively ambitious endeavor that, like, didn't even have a traditional script and has all this crazy production design and world building, and is, like, maybe alienating for some people. We did an episode on that about a year ago, and Jelani was very put off by the world building in that, and I think that I disagree with him, but I think it's a valid reaction. This is much more accessible, and it feels like an achievable goal. Like, if we're putting as much money into these massive budget action movies as is often done, get out of the green screen look and, like, stop using the volume. Do what this movie does. I think if your main appeal, or a main appeal of your movie, is going to be action scenes, go study the hell out of the climax of this movie, both in, like, the writing and the, like, way that it's shot, and go study the Paris chase sequence. I have rewatched that scene so many times, and, like, every third shot, I'm like, oh, I love this shot. This shot is fantastic. And I think it's the only movie I've ever walked out of where I was like, those action scenes, I don't know how to, like, articulate it, but I was like, those action scenes were really well constructed. Like, the pacing of them is just so good. Both in terms of, like, the scenes in isolation, they're really well paced. Like, there's good reversals that happen. It never gets stale. It doesn't feel repetitive. Like, they're introducing new elements. The look of them is good. They're edited really well. And also the pacing of the movie, like, gives you enough time to breathe in between action sequences, and it paces them out really well where you're always ready for the next one. I really still am disappointed that 7 and 8 were just not Fallout 2 and 3. So that is the end of the ranking. I wanted to throw in two other things. One is I want to shout out another spy movie from this year. Not an action movie, but a spy movie, Black Bag. Steven Soderbergh directs it. It's got Michael Fassbender, Cate Blanchett, Tom Burke, who is it? Naomi Harris, I think? Let me look that up real quick. Yes, it is Naomi Harris. And Tom Burke and Pierce Brosnan. A lot of people slept on this movie. It did not make its money back, unfortunately. I thought it was a really good time. And if you like spy movies, I highly recommend it. I think it's out on VOD that you can rent right now. So, shout out that. I also want to talk for a minute about where the series could go from here. They are saying right now that this is the last one. There is no talk about, like, potentially rebooting it. Tom Cruise seems to be done with it. Given his age, that's probably smart. And given how much they put into this movie, that's also, like, it also feels like they're trying to, like, send it off. Luther's dead now, and Ilsa's dead, so I kind of don't feel like they should bring in, like, a 9th movie with Tom Cruise. But I want this series to continue. I want them to reboot it, which is not a thing that I typically say, because I find that rebooting franchises tends to not go great. And there's no precedent for it. Like, this has gone on for 30 years at this point, with, you know, not necessarily, like, strong continuity between entries, but they're all meant to be part of the same world and part of the same series. They are not meant to be viewed as, like, there's no point where it's truly rebooting itself the way that something like Batman or Spider-Man or James Bond does. People might say, do we need a 9th Mission Impossible movie? I think yes. And I think it's largely because there's really only, out of these 8 movies, there's really only 3 that I really love. My top 3, obviously. A guest that we had on the show recently, Trisha Rand from Beyond the Screenplay, is a big fan of the Bond series, and I've been thinking about something that she says about that, which is if you're a fan of a series, you sit through the bad entries, and Bond has had a lot of bad entries, because you know you're going to continue getting good ones. And I don't feel that way about a lot of series, but I do feel that way about this one. I will happily have tolerated Dead Reckoning and The Final Reckoning if we reboot this series and we get some really good ones out of that. In an earlier time, I was happy to have gone through 2 and 3, which I think are weaker, and even Ghost Protocol, because we eventually got to Rogue Nation and Fallout. And I believe that we have not seen the best that a Mission Impossible movie can offer. It is going to be really tricky rebooting the series because, by many people's estimation, Tom Cruise is the last true movie star. I think there's a couple others, but some people like to say that. And I don't think they're entirely wrong. We are out of an age where a single star can, like, carry a franchise in the way that they could back when this series started in the 90s. But I don't think you need that to keep the series going. It certainly helps. It would be in Paramount's interest to find a big star to relaunch this series with. But I really would like to see just a new team come in, a new IMF team, and maybe you bring back, like, one legacy character to kind of tie it to the original series in some way where, like, say Benji is the IMF director in these new movies, so you still have at least a little bit of continuity, and, like, they can maybe acknowledge that Ethan Hunt is a person that used to exist in this world. You might have a couple of Easter eggs, but I mostly think this would be well served by having a completely new cast of characters, and I would really love the first movie to, like, really sell us on this team. even if not all of them are going to stick around, because, like, you know, there's stuff that happens with actors, and I think that's part of why we don't have a solid team throughout these 8 movies. They never really wanted to take the time to establish new characters because they didn't know which of them were going to stick around. I really want them to just go for it and assume that everyone's going to stick around, and if they don't, then, well, at least we've done the work with these other people. I was thinking about, like, dream casts that I would do. I would love to see... you can see from the poster behind me that I'm a fan of Tenet. I would love to see John David Washington take up, like, the Tom Cruise mantle. I think he can do it. I think he's one of the few stars that I would really trust to do that. I'm sure he's not the only one who could, but he's the only one that comes to mind for me. I would love to see Caitlin Dever on the team as well. She's kind of a rising star with The Last of Us now. Throw on a couple others. Elliot Page, love to see him and stuff more, especially, like, bring him back into action movies. Amandla Stenberg was someone else I was like, rising star, get her in there, maybe as, like, the rookie character. And then, for some reason, I was feeling Dev Patel as the villain, because he's a little older than the rest of that crew, and I feel like we haven't seen him in a villain role, and that would be really fun, because I think he's been in action roles. He's someone I can see, like, throwing down with the protagonists in a fight scene, but also would be so at home in, like, a government bureaucrat role where he's, like, some rich dude, head of some foreign government agency kind of thing. Like, he feels like he would be really cool to see as a villain, because I don't think we've seen him play one. I feel like you could have a couple other people in there, like, have some kind of more veteran actor, like a Simon Pegg, coming in as, like, the IMF director. If you're not going to have it connected to the series, like, that's fine. I think it kind of lends itself to, like, give yourself, like, a Jim Phelps in the first movie, like an established star. DiCaprio is coming to mind. I feel like he's a little bit too big of a star to attach to this, and he doesn't seem to really want to do that. But somebody of his generation who's, like, as established as he is. Brad Pitt also feels a little bit too big, but somebody of that nature. If you don't actually have John David Washington, Denzel, I think, could take that role. I think it'd be a little bit weird to have the father-son actor pairing. You know, somebody of that caliber and generation as, like, sort of the senior official overseeing the team. Pointing back to Black Bag, you have Pierce Brosnan as the kind of, like, senior director over all of these other characters. And he's not doing as much, but he's kind of like the authority that they answer to. I talked about my, like, dream Mission Impossible movie, at least in, like, an on-paper sense. I broke that down in the video essay at the end. And I think we could get that. I've thought about this with some other long-running franchises. Like, do we really need another Terminator movie? I think that series might have hit its peak. Do we need another Bond movie? I'm sure we're going to get more. I don't know if we can top Skyfall and Casino Royale. I think we can continue hitting that bar, and I'm welcome to see them keep trying. But I'm not sure if it can exceed it. I would be okay if they stopped making Bond movies. I don't know if we need more Alien movies. Do we need... And I mean, like, the specific Alien franchise, not, like, just movies with aliens in them. I think that series might have peaked as well. I enjoyed Romulus last year, but is it really going to be better than Aliens? I don't know if you can really top that in the original. But I do think that there is more to offer that this series has not given us yet, and it can. I think, you know, we might never get a better action entry into the series than Fallout, but as I said, the most lacking element of this series is the team, and I want to see a team grow with each other over time. Ghost Protocol, I think, wanted to be that movie. Ultimately, it was not. Whether we call it Mission Impossible 9 or we give it some spin-off name, I really, really want them to take that approach and, like, dedicate themselves to character in restarting this franchise. Because as iconic of an actor as Tom Cruise is, and I do think they are consistent with Ethan Hunt in the 8 movies of this series, and I think they're consistent with Luther as well, they do not dedicate enough time to character in them. Again, Ilsa's an exception, but I think that is something that is lacking from a spy movie of this kind. If you want to take like the big spy franchises that exist, Bond doesn't really do that much with character. They did more with the Craig movies, and some of those hit, some of them don't. I appreciate that they tried and in some cases succeeded. But that's one character. Kingsman brings it with the action. There's at least some character stuff in there. I think they do a perfectly passable job, but they don't really have a team there. That's a single protagonist movie. You might say like dual protagonist with Harry and Eggsy, but definitely that's not a spy team. These movies have spy teams. Every single one of them does. But I don't think any of them really put in the work to be a great spy team. And I really want to see that. If I ever am lucky enough to work on this series, that is the main thing I will be focusing on. And if I just write my own original one, it's also going to be the main thing I focus on. I really hope we get that. I am hopeful for the future of this franchise. Like, at this point, I'll be happy if they continue it at all. And I don't think it's really taking air up from anything else. Like, I think if this series does go away in 10 years, if we don't get a Mission Impossible movie or anything to like kind of replace it as the action spy franchise to beat, I think we are going to feel that lack a little bit. I at least know that I will. And in the meantime, I'll keep rewatching Fallout and Rogue Nation to fill that space. So thank you guys for sticking around to the end. Hopefully this was a good time for you. If you're new here, do all of the like, share, subscribe things. Let me know what else you want me to cover, either in video essays or rankings. I so far have been pairing these rankings with video essays that I do, but not everything that can be ranked lends itself to a video that I want to write, and not every video essay that I am planning to write lends itself to a ranking. So let me know in both cases. We have our other channel with our podcast. We've talked about Mission Impossible 1 on there. We also have our Patreon, which you can join for $1 a month and watch our Mission Impossible 2 watch along with other stuff. We have bonus episodes on there. I would recommend checking out the podcast first, because all of our Patreon stuff tends to be more related to that than the stuff I do over on this channel. But we have plenty of other things to check out, and we are always looking for recommendations for other stuff to cover. I have plenty of plans for stuff we want to do both on this channel and on the podcast, but I will take any and all recommendations into account. So thank you for sticking to the end, and let me know what your ranking is also in the comments. I'm sure a lot of people disagreed with me. Let me know why I'm wrong to have Mission Impossible 2. I know that I'm justified in that opinion. And like, if you thought I didn't give credence to, I feel like the one I did dirtiest here is Ghost Protocol. Like, please tell me why I'm wrong about Ghost Protocol, because I want to like that one so much more than I do. Throw all of that in the comments. And if you haven't already, check out the video essay that I did on the first 7 movies. That's a much more in-depth look. It's probably a little bit shorter than this is going to end up being once I edit it down, but it is much more comprehensive and is much less influenced by my own opinion. I try to be a bit more objective there, even though that's never a thing that's possible to do in film criticism. But in the meantime, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.